Now, as you would have heard from our news, Gardaí are investigating after a mutilated fox was found hanging from an overhead line on the Cork-Kerry border. The animal was discovered near Guineas Bridge in Rockchapel, close to Brosna. A photograph sent to Radio Kerry News shows that the fox had been decapitated. The animal's head is attached to an overhead wire and the rest of the body was attached to a twine suspended from the telegraph line or the telecoms line. Gardaí say the animal has been removed. They couldn't remove it initially because they needed specialist equipment to do so, to get it down from where it had been purposely hung for the display to all. Well, with this in mind, and with in mind the fact, of course, that protections of foxes under the Wildlife Act are pretty basic at best, I spoke to John Tierney, who is with the Irish Association of Hunt Saboteurs. They are against, obviously, fox hunting and want more protection for the foxes. I spoke to him about this issue, and I also talked to him about Ruth Coppinger's legislation she's put forward, her private members' bill seeking to ban fox hunting. And first of all, asked him his reaction to the disturbing discovery near Guineas Bridge.
Well, first of all, it was horrific to actually see the treatment of a wild animal. It must have been very upsetting for people to see a decapitated fox swinging from a telegraph pole. And it just shows you the level of hatred that is out there for foxes, that somebody would actually make the effort to do this. Because normally when foxes are killed by hunters or shooters, the body is thrown into a ditch and left to rot. But in this case, the body was put on public display and people were bound to see this. It was inevitable somebody would see this. And you wonder what is the reasoning behind it? Is it some sort of message saying that we can do whatever we like to foxes and we don't care?
And the amount of effort that went into it, it's just disturbing, really, the amount of effort, because it took the Gardaí and the authorities quite some time. They couldn't immediately take it down because they had the lack of suitable equipment to take it down. But whoever put it up there obviously went to all the extra lengths to do that, put it on that level of public display, which is very disturbing.
It is very disturbing, and I could be open to correction on this, Jerry, but I don't think any offence was committed because the fox is not protected under the Wildlife Act. So once you kill it, you're allowed to kill it, and then you're allowed to dispose of the body. So I don't know if, strictly speaking, an offence against wildlife was committed here. Maybe there might be an offence of interfering with public property, but on the wildlife end of things, I don't think any offence was committed, which is a horrendous statement to say, but under the Wildlife Act, the fox receives no protection, and you can hunt and kill it 12 months of the year.
And is that the central point from this that your organisation wants, John, that Wildlife Act needs to be changed? How does it need to be changed, and what sort of protection would you put it under, if you could?
Well, under the Wildlife Act, wildlife is divided into two categories. You've got protected animals who are protected under the Act. That would be things like badgers or marine life, the Irish hare. And then on the other side, you have the non-protected species, which is the things like fox, mink, rabbit, and they receive no protection under the Wildlife Act. So what we would like to see is that all wildlife species in the country, with no exceptions, be put under the Wildlife Act and fully protected. And under the Wildlife Act at the moment, even protected animals can be hunted through a licensing system. So you can get a license to hunt deer, hare, and the Department of Agriculture are getting a license to snare badgers. So even under the Wildlife Act, animals are which are protected also face danger as well. That's why we want to see a total ban on all forms of hunting and all wildlife to be protected under the Wildlife Act.
Okay, what would you say to those, John, who would say, look, when it comes to foxes, look, they're widely abundant, they're not protected for a reason, they're everywhere, and that if you didn't have some sort of hunting or control, the population may get out of control and out of hand and upset the balance of nature, shall we say, and increase the nuisance factor to farmers and others?
Well, first of all, foxes do not need to be controlled, and that's based on the research that's conducted in Ireland, UK and around the world. Foxes control their own numbers, and you'll never have a situation where you'll have too many foxes. Artificial fox control, like shooting, hunting with hounds, which incidentally is not even a form of fox control, they upset the natural balance. So these activities don't actually control foxes, and they should be seen for what they are. They're recreational activities involving the use of a fox. They have nothing to do with conservation. They have nothing to do with the protection of the species, and they're not designed to. These activities are recreational activities at the expense of a fox. So when we ban them, the fox population will work away on its own level. We'll never have too many foxes in this country. We just won't.
You don't think that, but if you were to ban, let's say, aside from fox hunting, let's just say, are you talking about banning the killing of any foxes for any reason?
Absolutely, because fox control, artificial fox control, simply does not work. Because at a very basic level, if you go out and shoot a fox in an area, what you're creating is a vacuum effect where there's a territory available, so another fox moves in. So you're not really solving any problem in the long term. Foxes will coexist with farmers without any problem whatsoever. But when you start hunting them, you're causing problems. And not only to the fox, but also to landowners as well who'd want hunting on their land. So artificial fox control must be seen for what it is. It's a standalone recreational activity. And what we as a society have to do is decide, is that acceptable in 2025 that people go out with a pack of hounds and hunt down an animal for up to 7 hours just purely for entertainment? Not conservation.
I come on to that, but I'm just talking about the general point about protecting foxes and what would happen to their population. Yes. What would you say to those say, well, look, a farmer, lambing season in particular, foxes can take some lambs, that's where they want control. And if you take that away, they won't be able to protect their flocks at that key time.
Well, first of all, fox predation on lambs is blown out of all proportion. And again, all the research have shown, not only in Ireland, but the UK and Europe, on sheep farms, show that the biggest causes of sheep losses is starvation and exposure and dystocia, which is difficult birthing. Fox predation is so far down the list, it's not even recorded. So foxes do not take lambs, and the majority of lambing systems in this country are indoor lambing systems.
Well, they do take lambs. I think it's fair to say they do. Farmers have a different story in relation to them, whether they take lambs or not. But look, we won't get into that in the time we have. Let me ask you about the legislation which is being proposed for the Dáil right now. Ruth Coppinger has proposed a ban on fox hunting. You'll obviously be fully in support of that.
We certainly would be, and what we would say is that the politicians have now an opportunity to stand up for wildlife and support the passage of this bill. And we would hope that a whip system does not apply, because if a whip system apply, a lot of people just won't vote for the legislation. But I think what is important here is that the issue of blood sports will have to be dealt with at some stage by politicians. They just cannot run away from it because it's on the political agenda. And it's only through political action will we ban blood sports. We got it in the UK, we got it in Scotland, we got it in Wales, who have banned hunting, banned coursing. So it's only through political action, and politicians will have to deal with this issue. It just can't be put on the long finger any longer. We've campaigned too long for it, and we need to action now. But the message is that blood sports will be dealt with in this country, and eventually they will be banned. That's going to happen at some stage.
Do you have confidence it will happen with this bill, or what's your opinion based on what you've heard from them? There's been plenty of politicians, plenty of rural politicians who've spoken out against this bill, totally opposed to it. What's your feeling as to what will happen with this one? Does it have any hope of success at this time, John?
Well, at the moment it doesn't, because the government has said that they will oppose it at the second reading. But the thing about politics is that anything can change. And if we get a momentum of steam behind this bill, we could push it. The main thing is that it's on the political agenda and people are talking about it. And it is a bit sad to see rural politicians in particular trying to put this as an urban-rural divide. It has nothing to do with urban and rural divide. And there's a lot more issues in the countryside that are more important than blood sports. Blood sports is a minority interest in the countryside. And there is far more rural issues that need to be dealt with, and that's where the energy should be put, not supporting blood sports.
Okay. All right, John. Well, look, thanks very much for taking time to talk to me about that on the programme this morning.
A pleasure, Jerry. Thank you.
That's John Tierney of the Irish Fox Hunt Saboteurs Association. They're foursquare behind Ruth Coppinger's proposed legislation. And you should tune into Agri Time this evening, because Sari Hoolan will have Ruth Coppinger on the programme